Good day and welcome to this, for now, periodic edition of Spotlight, the news and feature show on Channel 977 and YouTube about people and events of interest to Lake Monticello. And today, it is a pleasure and an honor to welcome Lake resident Tony O'Brien, who is in his second term as Vice Chair of the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors. Mr. O'Brien serves also on the Thomas Jefferson Planning Commission, the Go Virginia District 9 Board, the Virginia Career Works Advisory Board, and the Parks and Recreation Committee. Mr. O'Brien was born in Mexico with parents were working overseas, first few years there, and then it was off with the family to Spain for another 10 years or so until coming back here to the good old Commonwealth of Virginia, where he was educated at the university. With that, after that, he started in 1968 his company, Helix Company Systems, to provide IT support, development, programming, and telecommunication services to businesses in the Central Virginia area. So, Mr. Tony O'Brien, welcome to Spotlight, and I have you with us.
It's good to be here, Ron. Thank you for having me. I want to make one small clarification. I didn't start it in 1968, as I would have been 4, but
I'm sorry, 1998.
1998.
But I knew you were precocious.
Computer systems, yeah, exactly. So,
pardon me. Thank you for correcting me on that.
No problem at all. No problem.
You penned an article recently concerning the possible redistricting here in Fluvanna County. Now, with the delay in the census data, has that been postponed? Is it moot? Is it still possible?
Yeah, theoretically, it is still possible, though the clock is ticking pretty quickly. Candidates have to submit their paperwork in June. And if they don't submit their paperwork, then obviously they're not on the ballot. While there's still an effort, and I think they're trying their best to get those numbers, the reality is that the state will have to, once they have the census numbers, would have up to 45 days to review that and come up with their own districts. My understanding is that they're not expecting a lot of changes at the state level in terms of redistricting, but of course we have a new commission in place which will look at the redistricting. So I don't see how we wouldn't see some changes. Although the county is trying to take kind of an estimate as to what we think would be the growth in the various different districts, and we are discussing loosely how we might move forward. It really does not seem like we will be able to get this done this year, and that more than likely the existing district layout is what is going to be in place. With the exception of Mike Sheridan's district, which is Columbia, that includes the jails, the women's prison, which now prisoners are allowed to vote in their home districts. Most of the other counties have, or most of the other districts have remained relatively even in terms of their size. And that's part of the goal of redistricting, is to make sure that we have an equal size for each district.
Mm-hmm. All righty. The Board of Supers is now considering how the Fluvanna school budget, we've been reading about that, will work into the overall Fluvanna County budget. How do things stand there?
Well, we got a little bit of good news last week. A lot of the CARES funding in the second relief package is very significant, and the schools had initially submitted a budget that was close to about 800,000 more funds. Yeah. And a big portion of that was that they were trying and working hard to essentially consolidate the gap between the two pay systems that are part of the school system right now. You have kind of the new employees that are hired, and they're on a scale scale B, and the older employees are on scale A. And depending on where you are in your period, that can result in your tenure, that can result in some substantial pay differences. So the school board worked hard to put together a budget that would help to narrow that gap and almost put it to bed. And that was a big part of the $800,000 that they'd initially asked for. The state however, is coming back and now allowing for a 5% raise, which I believe the county plans to match. Because again, the state doesn't always fully fund. They'll give a raise to a select group of employees, but that then means that we are left in the position of having to fund those other employees. And so that raise is significant, but the good news is that they are now thinking that their budget is going to be under $400,000, which will allow the county to fully fund it, which is fantastic. And as it's looking right now, even though we have an advertised rate of 92 cents, the targeted rate that we were pushing for was around 89 and a half. I think we might actually go a little bit below that, which to be fair is still a slight tax increase over the previous year, because we had a reassessment. The rate's the same, but the reassessment changed the values. And so therefore it's an increase of about 3.5, maybe 3%. To the average homeowner.
All right. Well, all things considered, I guess it doesn't sound too awful. You
No.
got on the one hand, and then on the other hand, this is back and forth. These are really very difficult times.
They are.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah.
And one other thing we're working on that is important to mention as well too is, part of the budgeting cycle always allowed sort of for a, I want to say play, but as our budgeting has become more and more sophisticated, and we've really zeroed in the numbers, and we do a lot of analysis in advance to make sure that the budgets are as tight as possible. The differential between what the school system usually spends and what they often return to the county has narrowed, and that has traditionally helped to fund the CIP balance. The CIP being the larger amounts of monies that are spent for big projects, say a new building, a new roof, school buses, etc. Anything over $50,000 is considered potentially a CIP item, and so that CIP number has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller over the years, and consequently, we haven't fully funded a CIP in many years. Last year, in fact, we didn't fund the CIP at all. And we did that in part because of the unknowns of the COVID, of COVID in our economy. So we really weren't sure what was going to happen and what the impact was going to be on the state and on the county itself.
Yeah.
The net result is that it hasn't been as bad as we thought it was going to be, and that's great news. But we are looking at taking out a loan because interest rates are, of course, extremely low right now, and with inflation rates coming, basically, we could probably have a negative rate. So we're looking at taking out a loan of about $20 to $25 million, which we will be able to pay for with essentially debt that's coming off the books right now, so that we don't think there'll be any impact on the taxpayer. And yet that will allow us to start working on funding an administration building, which helps to consolidate some other buildings where we have, older buildings and some problems with those buildings and with the workforce in the buildings and how they can work more efficiently. Allow us to buy some additional school buses, some additional fire trucks, and just in general improve some of the buildings in the area. And so that's a significant deal for the county, if you ask me, because it's really going to help us catch up with CIP projects that have been delayed for many years. And so I'm excited about that. And I'm particularly excited about being able to do that without really having any impact on the taxpayer. It changes our debt, but the reality is that we need to do many of these projects, and ultimately you're going to assume debt to take on those projects. So it's really a question as to when do you take on those debts. And I think this is a great time to do it.
Well, that's good news. Certainly, it hasn't deterred in a couple of national administrations from taking on a whopping amount of debt. So a little bit here in the county. Why not? One could say
the county's debt now is at about 86 million, I believe, Ron. And a big chunk of that is, of course, the schools.
Yeah.
We pay down about $6 to $7 million in debt every year. So if you look at $20 million, that's essentially paid for in about 3 or 4 years in terms of, when I say paid for, bringing us back to our current level of debt. So, but while it's always something that the board considers very carefully as to how to move forward with that, I think that, again, that this is probably the right move for the county.
Well, okay, very, very good. The county recently conducted a survey, I guess, answered by a little over 500 people. What stood out for you in there?
Well, I think that, there were a variety of responses, most of them, a lot of responses when it came to business and economic development and growth in the area. And I think it depends on where you live and what your sentiment is. A lot of folks, of course, would like to see more businesses in the area, and they'd like to see that for two reasons. One, to shop, and the other is to help take the burden off the homeowners. And so that's still an important message that's coming across to the board. And as I said, economic development is going to be a priority, continues to be a priority, but it's really what we're focusing on. And the second, I think, thing is that, people want to be able to live and work in Fluvanna County and reduce their commute. And so we saw some feedback along those lines as well too, is let's get more jobs. Let's bring some attractive jobs to the county. And again, I think that's all great. On the development side, some folks are all for more development. Other folks are basically saying, hey, well, we're going a little too fast here. But, we have had basically, since the Great Recession, we've basically had almost zero growth in terms of homes. So we're really now starting to see those numbers come up. I think startups last year were under 50. And now, of course, we're like back to 125, 130. So we're really starting to see some of that growth. And you're seeing that in some of the larger developments that are being put up right now.
Yeah, certainly. We certainly are. That's for sure. The survey did not touch on the county's extensive efforts in terms of COVID relief, but they have been very important. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that, again, the state provided funds from the federal government for relief, and those funds were pretty significant for both the schools and for the county. We were able to use those funds to provide business loans and grants to many of the businesses in the area that were affected by COVID. We were able to provide, personal protection gear and set up sites to help promote, people's safety. I think everybody's seen those signs that we have out there that says protect each other. And that is certainly something that I think is an important message, is that we all, take the effort to protect each other. So I'm happy that we did those. We funded a lot to the nonprofit organizations. We put a lot of money into Meals on Wheels. There's, of course, been many local groups, including Rotary, which I belong to, that put together an awful lot of food drives in our community. And I think that the other thing too, we saw a lot of money come into the schools to help address some of the problems that they were having, and it also helped us address and hire some additional people in the county as well too, to take on the burden of COVID, if you would. So yeah, I'm really happy about what happened and how that's helped us in a way.
I certainly have. No, that the county's stepped up big time on that, and I'm sure very much appreciated all the way around.
Absolutely.
And now, getting back to that economic development, those folks who are interested in more, there's some good news out there, isn't there? There's the company Silk City has moved from New Jersey, all the way from New Jersey. I think probably Patterson, where the silk mills were, right near the falls, have relocated to Fork Union, an area that can certainly use it, bringing 60 jobs or something like that.
60 jobs to start with. It was promoted by the governor, so that was that's always special when you get the governor to come up and say, we've got this great project that's happening in Virginia, and the state helped us with attracting that business to the area, and absolutely it's a benefit to Fork Union. And of course, we've got some other exciting projects that are going on. Roughly, I think in 2019, we were able to attract up to 15 million in new investments into the county with about 156 new jobs. 2018 was a little bit different, but not a whole lot. I mean, we still had, I think, in the neighborhood of about 70 jobs that we attracted, and about $7 or $8 million in investments into the county as well, too. So we're definitely seeing some enthusiasm and excitement in the county as we've been working on our water projects, and we've been working to change the for lack of a better word, maybe the attitude that some of the developers and or some of the businesses had in the area as to whether Fluvanna was friendly business. We're extremely friendly business. We don't have a business license tax, and that's something that is good in attracting new business. We have low property taxes, and we have a great workforce. And now with both water and internet being more or less available in the Zion's Crossroads and high-speed internet, that's really offering a lot of opportunities for businesses to come in. So I know that there's some more additional projects that we have on the books that I can't speak of, but if those came through, we'd attract about another 140 jobs as well, too. So all total, if you look at that, you're talking about 350 or some odd jobs with maybe 25 to 35 new businesses in total over the last couple of years. So that's a really strong move in the right direction.
Well, that's substantial after so many years of basically nothing, pretty much nothing happening. And
let's touch back on that real quickly, Ron. I think that's one of the things that when you look at the survey and you look at people's responses around that, I think there is a little bit of a disconnect between what the county is doing and what people are seeing. Some of these businesses, they're not something that you might see right, in Zion's Crossroads, but they're spread throughout the county. And so there is a little bit of a disconnect there. And we're talking about in putting about $15,000 in this year's budget to make sure that we're really promoting and highlighting the aspects of what Fluvanna is doing to bring business to the area.
Well, that's great. Well, of course, the folks here at Lake Monticello are going to be noticing the nice big tractor supply company that's going to be opening shortly. I mean, it's just cheek to jowl with Sycamore Square, so right up the road from CVS. So there's and that makes it, you don't have to go into Charlottesville for your tractor supply and all of your materials. But that's very good too. And so the water, the status of the water from the James to the women's prison, and then the connection eastward to Zion Crossroads, is that pretty well complete?
Well, there are two projects, and I know there's a lot of confusion around this. There is the project that what we call basically the ZXR water project, and that is bringing water from the reservoir that's at the women's prison and the Meechunk Creek. There's a treatment facility there, so that allows us to get treated water of about 125,000 gallons, as well as about 75,000 gallons of sewer per minute, and that's not an unsubstantial amount of water, but it is also not the kind of long-term sustainable water that we would need for the growth in the area. And I'm sorry, I said per minute, I meant per day, gallons per day. That meant that we needed to find another source of water, and that's where the James River Project has come into play. And we're doing that in conjunction with Louisa. Louisa is, I would say, the major partner in that, because they're ultimately extending the pipeline from wherever it ends up down the county line to closer to the next exit down from Zion's Crossroads, which I apologize, I'm driving a blank on right now. But they would then go up from there to Zion's Crossroads, and then we would connect both systems together. And ultimately, when we have that in place, we would have over 2 million gallons per day available to the area, as well as ultimately having availability of up to 6 million gallons per day. And that project is currently at a little bit of a standstill because of our negotiations and conversations with the Monica Nation. So the James River Project is probably about 2 years behind from where we'd like it to be,
Mm.
which is unfortunate on the one hand. But the good news is the ZXR project is very close to completion. That should be completed this year, sometime in the next few months, I hope. They're doing some testing on the water pressure of the system. And once they've got that in place, that nice, beautiful water tower that we have down in Zion's Crossroads will be
Yeah.
filled with water. And we will be able to start supplying businesses with water in that area. And what makes water so essential for a large business is that, or I don't even say a large business, there's lots of reasons why you need water, but when you talk about commercial development, typically you're talking about buildings that are over 10,000 square feet, and those need fire suppression systems in place, and they
Mhm.
need the pressure that is brought forth by a water system. And that's really what's held back the Zion's Crossroads area on the Fluvanna side from developing at the rate and
Yeah.
the levels that we'd like to see.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great prospect all the way around. The Planning Commission noted this week, speaking of a couple of more projects, had special use permit requests before them. One for a gas station and car wash at the new roundabout junction of 618 Lake Monticello Road and 53, and another for a solar facility down here right off 53 on 600 next to the Central Virginia Electric transmission installation down there. And another couple of items that the pending that sort of sound good. That was before the Planning Commission this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize, I didn't follow through on both of those items with you there, but I'm almost 100% certain that the Planning Commission would have made a unanimous recommendation for both of those. The Planning Commission usually, when they don't like something, they let us know. The board still has the prerogative of saying we want to move forward with it. But as far as I know, there's no real controversy on either one of these projects. And of course, that roundabout area there, we have approved, and that site there has been approved for about 175 apartments.
Yeah.
And another like 80 homes, townhomes combination. So that's going to be a nice new development area there. And we set aside about 15% of that area for commercial growth. And of course, the gas station and the washing car wash there are part of that.
Yeah. Well, everybody said in commercial development years ago, what you need are rooftops. And so there are going to be some new rooftops up there. That's for sure. With all of this going on, Tony, what does the Board of Supervisors collectively think is the most critical?
I think the Board of Supervisors, and we have a really good board, in my opinion, right now, because we all bring a balance of opinions, and we're all very respectful, and we take the time to hear and listen to each other. And so, generally speaking, most of our votes are with a 5-0 vote. There are times when we don't agree on things, but those times are probably 5% of the times. The rest of the time, I think we're in solid consensus. And the board has definitely adopted and recognized the importance of economic development and bringing businesses to the area and helping to balance the tax base. I think that we are moving forward in the right direction. In a lot of those areas, there's plenty of work still to be done. And certainly with water coming to the area, we certainly would expect to see more and more growth. We then have to balance that growth against the rooftops and against the core services. So we don't want to have out of control growth, but we want to have solid, sustainable growth. I look at the role of the board to make sure that the county is competitive. And when I say competitive, we have to be an attractive place to live. We have to be an attractive place to grow in relationship to the surrounding counties. If we allow ourselves to fall behind, then people will move into a different county, and we're not competitive from that standpoint. Businesses will go to that other county. So we have to make sure that we're doing our best to be as attractive of a place for the growth that is coming to Virginia in general.
Well, that's great. That's a very good perspective to end on, I think, and a very upbeat note for the county certainly I think more upbeat than it's been in several years. So
It has been, and we didn't touch on internet, but you know, I was at a meeting with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, made a meeting. I'm sorry, had a meeting on Friday, and in that meeting, Rappahannock Electric, Central Virginia Electric Co-op, and Dominion basically have combined forces to work through Firefly. And that means that pretty much every home in the county will have availability to real broadband, fiber to the home, of 100 megs by 100 megs, or up to a gig if you wanted to go from that direction, a very competitive pricing. So I think that, you know, that again is something where we will be one of the first counties in Central Virginia to have internet to the home for almost everybody. And in a rural county, that's a huge deal because of course, a lot of people depend on it. And we've seen how important that is in the last year with kids having to work from home. So, I mean, not work from home, study from home. So, and I think there's a shift in the workforce now, where you're going to see a lot more people that are able to work from home because their employers have learned that they can do that and count on their employees to do a good job.
Yeah, that's could be one of those things going forward that we're going to retain from the dreadful COVID era. So anyhow, thank you so much for being with us. It has been a real pleasure and certainly an educational one. And we'll look forward to talking with you again.
Oh, thank you, Ron. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate all your help.
We've been talking with Tony O'Brien, Lake resident, who is Vice Chair of the Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors. We hope that you'll join us for future spotlights as they may occur, and also to check in on the rest of the programming brought to you by the Lake Monticello Owners Association broadcast group. So this has been a great get together for again the first time in a long time. But you can watch this programming on your channel 977 or on YouTube. And so until we see you again for the LMOA broadcast group, I'm Ron Krause. Thanks very much for watching, and good day for now.